Welcome to another edition of Market Impact Insights, your podcast source for business leadership perspectives to help your business grow. Hear from experts in marketing, sales, business strategy, and more, with practical advice for business success. Make sure you won't miss the latest episodes by visiting marketimpactnow.com. Now, here's your host, Dan Albaum.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of Market Impact Insights. Before we get into the conversation, a reminder to please check out my new book, The Giving Edge. It is a very inspirational and thought-provoking journey through 37 remarkable humans and their life experiences that have shown how bringing a giving mindset every day has given them exponential returns in business and life. So check it out wherever you find books. And today's conversation is so timely in a world that is fast changing, hyper competitive. It's tough being a business leader out there. And one of the things that we wrestle with as a leader, and our teams certainly do every single day, is problem solving. How do we overcome some of the challenges, the headwinds in the business? How do we break through and drive innovation? We're going to run into some road bumps, some speed bumps along the way, and how we approach that problem solving has such an impact on just our mindset and our motivation. The frustration level can build if we're just grinding away and just never seeming to get to that right solution. And we're going to talk about this dynamic and so much more about leadership with Kevin D. St.Clergy. He is a best-selling author, a business coach, and a podcast host known for Beyond Blind Blaming. That's a framework which is helping entrepreneurs and leaders stop solving the wrong problems and instead identify the real root causes of their challenges. And I mentioned he's an author. His book, Beyond Blind Blaming, really kind of gets into this dynamic. It's right in front of us. It's all about mindset and approach, and I can't wait for the conversation. Kevin, welcome to Market Impact Insights.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you having me.
So let's go back. You've had a very interesting career journey. What really motivated you originally to be committed to helping leaders achieve more sustainable growth?
That's something I've done my entire career. I was, at the beginning of my career, I was offered a chance. And business leaders for a consulting division they had, and that's what I picked. I got lucky though. As a younger adult, I was 26. In my words, I was still a kid, but I stopped at a Kinko's, and that's how old I am. If anybody remembers Kinko's, it's FedEx office.
Oh yes,
audiobook, and I had somebody recently, a couple of weeks ago, a very young person in a class I was teaching, say, "What's an audiobook?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I've gotten old. It's official." But I picked up an audiobook that I listened to, and I loved it. It was Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within, which is kind of a career. That was one of my favorite all-time books just because it's the first one I ever read in this type of thing. And I was driving 5,000 miles a month consulting for different business owners and leaders. And, after you listen to one or two audiobooks a week and then buy the books on the ones you loved, after about 5 years, you start to figure some things out. And so I got a really early start on coaching, consulting, all types of leaders. And it was really interesting to learn what really makes businesses successful and how they can scale. And it all came down to one thing. What I tried to focus on was building the business owner who built the business, or building the leader who led the business. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And when I did that, magical things started to happen. We raised belief lids where they could actually grow and double their business or triple. In fact, in some of the things that we do now, when you ask them, well, what was your biggest takeaway this year? What prompted the 43% growth? Me. Just believing that I can get somewhere different.
Yeah. And when you reflect back on your own journey, what's been some of your biggest learning? And have there been surprises for you along the way?
One of the best things I've discovered is after we had successfully exited our business, and then I decided to write a TED Talk, which is what this whole journey started on, which I actually had on Saturday at Cambridge. Finally, 4 years later, we finally got it booked. which I'm excited about, was just discovering blind blaming and what I've been doing my whole career. And I always go back. The surprise for me was, gosh, what if I would have known about this when I was growing and scaling my own business that I just exited out of? I probably could have gotten 3 times as much, and I may not have even sold at all. So I'd say that was one of my biggest surprises. When I discovered this, I was like, wow, if I would have just known about this when I was running my own business, even though we learned and we did some things to help move beyond what we're going to talk about today, that was probably one of my biggest surprises.
Yeah. And you were able to successfully exit twice, right? With your coaching and your digital marketing businesses. So you've kind of been through a couple of cycles of this and just observing this dynamic with your own high performing clients. It's real world and kind of real in practice. And let's get into this blind blaming. This is really interesting and something that we all need to kind of take to heart. What exactly is it? Can you go into it a little more deeply? And then really, why does it matter?
Sure. Well, I like to start with the origin story that we tell. And it's based on when I was 10 years old. I was a phenomenal baseball player. I had a batting average of 550. If you don't know anything about baseball, that's not good. That's extraordinary. And so we went to work. Well, I had dreams of playing for the Texas Longhorns and the Texas Rangers. And I was on my way to the major leagues, and I knew it. So in that off season, after that successful 10-year-old championship win that we had, we went to work. I played every day. It wasn't work to me. My dad got me a swing coach. He started working with me on mindset. You know how hard dads can push when they really find a talent to develop. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And when I stood up to bat at the 11-year-old league, something was different because I started swinging and missing. In fact, I missed every single pitch the next season and had a 0 batting average at the end of that next year. And you can probably guess, well, I went from hero to 0, basically. And you can probably guess what I heard from the stands. Come on, kid, keep your head in the game. No idea what that means. Play to win this time, like I showed up to lose. And then, of course, my dad's like, adjust your attitude. Thanks, Dad. Big help. And so after another year where I actually sat on the bench and only played 2 games, I quit baseball for good. The dream I had, something I built my entire identity around as a young kid, was gone. And 2 weeks after I quit, we found out what the real problem was. At a fluke eye exam, the doctor said, sorry, kid's practically blind without glasses. It had nothing to do with my swing, my attitude, my motivation. I just couldn't see the darn ball. But the real problem was this. None of the adults in my life for that 3-year stint stopped blaming me for something that was completely out of my control. Mm-hmm. And that's what I call blind blaming. And it's at the core of every organizational relationship or other unresolved problem that's out there. And once you find out what the real problem is, it changes everything. And what I like to say is it's not that people are failing. They're just solving the wrong problem perfectly over and over and over again. And it's keeping people stuck for years. And many times I'm discovering, just because we've had this out for a while, decades or longer. So it's blind blaming because it's blind because you can't actually see what the real problem is. It's blaming because we instinctively have to assign fault somewhere, even if it's to ourselves. And what I like to say just briefly is there's 3 fatal flaws of blind blaming, and then we'll move on. But the first flaw is that there's these cognitive biases that we've had that everybody listening, I'm sure, has heard of. They're kind of the result of some mental shortcuts that we have called heuristics. And it's kind of like a kink in the way that we think. So the first thing is called availability bias. And when you think you know what the problem is to something you're challenged with, or the solution is, that's it. The first thing you think of, because it's just convenient, that's what you're going to do. And then the fatal flaw number 2 comes into confirmation bias. Once you think you know what it is, then you start looking for data to back it up. But here's the problem. You start ignoring contradictory evidence, even when it's right there in front of you. There's a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolution where they studied researchers. And this guy figured out that even when the researchers had results that popped in, showed up when the way it thought was going to happen, everything was fine. But when something happened that didn't turn out like they thought they would, they'd run the research again and again and again. It was almost like the data didn't exist. And then finally, when you're so busy solving the wrong problem, you can't see the real problem that needs to be fixed. You get tunnel vision. And that's how people get stuck, especially sales leaders, entrepreneurs. But I've seen this in relationships, parenting. It shows up everywhere.
Yeah, and in my own experience in several organizations, there's a dynamic here related around blame, which is just even trying to focus all of your energy and attention on the assignment of the blame instead of even trying to get at the accurate root cause. So there's the process of getting to the accurate problem, but then even outside of that, if you're distracted and overly focused just on figuring out who can we assign blame and let's flog them and just punish them. I mean, that can be really destructive in organizations too, right?
You bet. Absolutely. Every day. And I'm sure some people listening are starting to realize that's happening to them right now. Because I know the first part of the book that we wrote, Beyond Blind Blaming, it's called awareness. And once you're aware of blind blaming, it does make a difference. So yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the other big traps that business leaders can fall into when it comes to their decision making and trying to navigate through all of the problems or challenges in their business?
I think it goes back to what we said before. The biggest trap is that they're fixing the wrong problem. And so when they make the decision to fix something and they get all behind it and things don't get better, well, then they blind blame again and they find something else that's at fault. And I think one of the things that I would encourage everyone to do, just like my baseball story, it took someone from outside of my sphere of influence to see what was really going on. And I think many times when we're in our organizations, and there's RCAs out there, which stands for root cause analysis. When you have a sphere of influence, your people, and you guys are trying to solve a problem together, well, you're all stuck with the same successes and failures that you already had. And it's almost impossible for you to see a different way of doing something. That's why I recommend everyone bring in an outside opinion on what's really going on. Just like on a health journey that I had to go on a couple of years ago, I lost 40 pounds last year. And I've been battling this for a long time. And pretty fit now, but it took an outside coach to say, Kevin, you know what your biggest problem is? It's your identity. You know what to do, but you've just been calling yourself fat and you drink and da-da-da. There was all these things in my identity. And once we fixed that, because I never wanted to be that gallon-toting gym bag douchebag. That's what I had in my mind that skipped out on wine night. And once we fixed the identity problem that we had, everything changed. And I mean everything, from the business to the book, to everything we're doing currently, everything was better.
Mm-hmm. And, it's just getting that objectivity of a fresh outside perspective, because sometimes our comfort zone, the people that are closest to us, may not be comfortable to really tell us a constructive, honest truth, right? And so we just kind of perpetuate and continue on. What you're talking about is really shaking things up, kind of a wake-up call through an objective voice.
That is correct. Yeah. So, I mean, recently we had a client who came to me and they were struggling. They were flat. And we looked at their close rates. They were 13%. And I just asked a question saying, well, who do you currently serve? And they named about 6 different avatars, if you will, targets. And I said, well, who do you enjoy working with the most? And she said, oh, we crush it with coaches. I'm like, why don't we focus on that? And then we'll build a sales process around it. And she actually started crying. She's like, not another sales process, please, Kevin. No, I've been through so many of these. Like, well, look, you have a different avatar now. We need to start asking different questions. And we developed a very simple 2-step call process where they had a discovery call and then they had a solution call. And we came up with 10 key questions that we tried to work on at every discovery call that we could. And it completely changed her business. Her close rate went from 13% to 50%, and they've doubled their business.
Wow. So how prevalent across the client landscape that you see is this focus issue, where they be trying to pursue too many different things at once and not getting a little bit more laser focused? Just, is that pretty dominant out there?
Pretty common. I see that it's going back to solving the right problem. The 2 that I've seen the most is the wrong avatar. They're serving the wrong person, or they're not focused enough. They're trying to be everything to everybody. And when we got laser focused on who we served in my company that we sold, everything changed. We grew it considerably. And we had people saying, you just seem to really understand my industry, my profession. You seem to know what I'm going through. Or if you're trying to be everything to everybody, you have to start over with every client. And there's a lot of people that it's called going deep versus going wide. And It's interesting because Russell Brunson was a coach of mine. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's kind of a big internet marketer, but he was my coach 20 years ago. Back then, he told me, look, you need to go deep into this profession that you've really got a good reputation in, and go as deep as you can in there. And we did. We did it successfully. But I do think there's some businesses out there that can go wide. You just have to do it in the right way. Online blaming applies to everyone. So there's been some shifts that we had to do. So you can target certain avatars and create that success, even though we serve a lot of different types of businesses and people. Hopefully that makes sense.
Absolutely. And you work with many entrepreneurs. And of course, building and scaling a business is really hard work. What advice would you give a entrepreneur around being able to scale, to get that growth, but avoid just the grind, or avoiding potential burnout? Because that's a big issue too.
It is. And I think that first you have to recognize that every new level, there's a new devil. It's just going to happen. For example, those businesses that are going $0 to $1 million, their number one goal is to find the right marketing mix to get them to that $1 million in revenue. Once you get to $1 million and you start to scale a little bit, what got you there isn't going to get you to the next level. You need to start focusing on developing people and so on and so on. So at every new level, there's a new devil. I think that's the biggest thing that they can recognize. And now we have a really great tool that can help you avoid the grind by simply asking AI what you think I should do and be critical.
And in that ramp up, in that scaling, can you talk a little bit about the dynamic? Because we hear a lot about founders that have a tough time kind of letting go, right? And empowering others versus, they've been so used to maybe doing so much themselves, hands-on, but at some point they're doing a disservice if they're trying to hold on and not empower the smart people that they have brought on to help with that scaling. What have you seen around that?
I see exactly what you just described. We just did our mastermind group that we had. We had 50 people sacrificing ourselves for the good of the company down in Napa Valley, California, with some wine tasting and things like that. It was a lot of fun. We did a big talk on, I did a talk on transformational leadership versus transactional leadership. And at the end of the 2 days that we had together, there was a lot of people who were like, look, I need to focus more on being transformational than transactional. Transactional meaning you're trying to still do the things you did and just trying to find somebody else to take over what you did. But transformational is where you're actually taking the time to develop your people. And that's what I see a lot of times is people aren't creating a great experience for their team. Here's what I hear all the time. This is a big blind blaming statement. Ready? People just don't want to work anymore, Kevin. And that one drives me crazy because I was like, really? Is it possible that they just don't want to work for you? And then I go into, tell me about how you're finding these people. Do you have some high performance profiles that you've created that match up with a certain type of personality that's going to make it more likely that person will succeed? And then I'll ask them, talk to me about your employee onboarding process. How do you make them feel important, that they should be part of a team and that you're going to work with them and develop them to hit their personal goals? Maybe even ask them, what do you want? And then when you have the onboarding, a lot of times I'll get, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, wrong answer. You clearly haven't thought this out. And that's why you're having problems with people not want to working anymore because they really just don't want to work for you.
Yeah. How critical do you think having a well understood and compelling vision and sense of purpose is, that you're conveying as you're bringing these people in as part of that process?
I think it's critical. First of all, you can't get there unless you know where you're going. And you can't get a lot of people to follow you that are just going to show up for work each day and just make a paycheck. People are really wanting to be part of something bigger. And those people that don't want to be part of something bigger, they're probably not the right fit for your team. People will get behind a good story and a good mission every single day. I've only had 4 jobs in my life before I started my company, and I count those, the companies I started, as my last job. But the reason I stayed at one of the first companies so long, 9 years, is because I really loved what we were doing. The organization was about helping people grow. And what I found was helping people grow is something I can get behind. And I've always tried to do that in my own companies. Our big mission with the companies I sold was to help these folks, because we were in the medical field, grow their practices. And if we grow their practices, we can change their life. And we did over and over and over again. And with this new company, with Beyond Blind Blaming, Our goal is to help 100 million people get to the root cause of a problem they can't seem to fix by moving beyond blind blaming. And if we do this, we're not just going to have a positive effect on people's business and their life. We're going to have a positive impact on society as a whole. Because everybody knows right now in the media, and it's not just now, this has happened for years, blind blaming is prevalent everywhere. And it is at the root cause of all the major problems that we have going on in the world today. Everybody's pointing fingers. Nobody's focused on the right solution or even the right problem.
So at the end of the day, Kevin, what do you think separates truly exceptional leadership from just good enough?
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about before. I think the one thing is the leaders who develop their people and make that a priority. That's what I think separates exceptional leaders from just good enough. Because the people that I find that are struggling with leadership, that tell me things like people don't want to work anymore, or they seem to keep attracting the wrong type of employee, because they're not focused on developing their people. They're just focused on what they do. There's doers and thinkers, and doers will never be thinkers, and thinkers will never ever be doers. When you have a bunch of thinkers on the team that control a group of doers, you can make things work really well, but you have to develop those thinkers into more. And even the doers, if you take the time to develop the doers, they will turn into thinkers. It was really cool to watch. And I'll give a great example. They're my personal executive assistant, Christina Can. She's been with me for 14 years. She started with something else, grew up, wanted to learn more, raised her hand a little bit, and we developed her into a leader. And she loves what she does. But she's still learning every day. Like right now, she's really diving into AI, because she thought her job was going to be replaced, because she wanted to do her job better. And she's learned that she can do her job better with that. And that's the mindset that we put in her, developed her with, that's made us so successful and made her successful in her personal career.
You've brought up AI a few times. I've got to ask you, Kevin, because we're all thinking about it. This is real. It's a reshaping strategy and execution. From your perspective as a leader, what should we be thinking about to really harness in a positive, constructive way this whole AI capabilities in our organizations?
I think it's important to recognize that you need to start teaching your team that they should have a team of AI agents underneath them. And it's not that they're going to lose their job. It's how can we get more things done in less time with less stress, with less cost. And if we do that, we're going to be more profitable as an organization. We'll continue to create opportunities for growth within our organization. But I think it's the org chart's going to change a little bit. So we still have some key roles, but each person in those key roles are going to have some AI agents underneath that they use to help make themselves more efficient, just like Christina can. We no longer need social media marketing managers because we have her who manages several AI agents that do the work that we used to have to hire out for. Christina Can does that now. So I think your org chart's going to change a little bit. I know for us, with the different positions that we have, each person has anywhere from 3 to 7 AI agents that they personally manage that help them get more done in less time with less stress. That's the big change that I think is coming that everybody's missing. Most people are still just using AI for writing emails or ideation or doing PowerPoints. It does so much more to automate your life. We don't. Christina Can used to reply to every single email, and now we've got AI that makes it look like it's her responding, and then it automatically drafts the email. It puts it into Google Workspace, which is what we use as a solution, and then she's just got to make sure that it's written away. It saved her probably 3 hours a day, and everybody gets instant replies. We like to try to reply within 24 hours. So everybody gets an email back from Christina Can or Claude that says, we've received your email. I'll schedule time for Kevin to work on this, or let's go ahead and get you scheduled. So she can do much more with less.
It seems like with many things, and it's true in AI, which is when you're fearful or you have a preset perception of something and you're uncomfortable with it because it's new and different, we're kind of writing a narrative. It's like predetermining what that is. But then once we actually go in and experience it, it's so much different and better. So as part of this, just getting your teams just to roll up their sleeves and get out there and start working with it and trying with it. And they may find that some of those blockers just go away.
They do. And I think what most people don't understand is this is the first tool that we've had in the history of humans, that if you're not sure how to use it, then ask it to teach you how to use it. If you don't know how to create agents, ask it how to create an agent. When you have problems, take a screenshot of what's happening and upload that into AI, and it will tell you how to fix it. It's a remarkable tool if you know how to use it. But here's the problem that most people have with AI, especially folks. I'm 53. I don't know how old you are, but I'm a little older, and I grew up using Google, and I got really good at using Google. And the problem was Google has trained us that short and sweet is all we need. Help me with a doctor that does this. I'm looking to do this. Help me find a PowerPoint template for that. Very short prompts, if you will. Search terms is what we used to call them. But for prompts for AI, you need to be a little bit more detailed to get what you want. And this is where most people get frustrated with AI, and they don't think it does what they want them to do. One tip that everyone can take away, there's another AI platform out there called Whisperflow AI. I don't use my keyboard hardly at all anymore. And when you have Whisperflow, you can, like I have mine programmed to hit control space, and you can talk a very long prompt, and it will actually transform it into a prompt that makes more sense to the AI tool that you're using. But you just talk into your microphone, not the one that they have built into the AI. This is a separate system. It's like $100 a year too. It's so cheap. But it's changed our world as an organization because we very rarely use the keyboard now, but we can be much more detailed on our prompts, and we're getting 50 times better responses back from AI. So just like anything else, when you find out how to use things the right way, get away from the old Google things that taught us that short and sweet is what you need. Yeah. Get really detailed prompts. You'll start to see why everyone is so excited about AI. Do I think you're going to be out of business next year if you don't use it? No. But I think you might have some competitors that will be ahead of you. My experience has been that people that are pitching the fact that you might be out of business in a year if you don't use AI are the ones who are selling the software and the programs that go along with it, or the people that are trying to raise money.
What's the best piece of business advice you've ever received?
I think I go back. There's a sign that I have in my little kitchenette that I see every time I sit down and I get up to the left. It simply says, how you do anything is how you do everything. And it's a constant reminder to me that how I do things after work has a direct impact. If you're not in good shape and don't take care of your body, which was the biggest thing that I ignored most of my life, you're not going to be able to be as efficient at work and at your best. If you have some things that are bad at home, you're going to bring that into work. Having successful relationships is important. So I would say that one statement that everybody should write down is how you do anything is how you do everything. I haven't really found anybody that's been that I can give that quote to. It's everywhere. I don't know if somebody finds it. I'd love to hear about it. But that's my favorite advice I ever received. It really made me think about how am I living my whole life.
And when you think about the future, what's making you optimistic?
Well, lately it's just how well Beyond Blind Blaming has been received and how much it's changing lives. You write a book, you just wonder. I think a lot of times when you're an author and you write a book, many times it's for yourself. But when you start having people that are actually reading it, going through the training programs, and it's changing lives, it makes me very optimistic about our goal. Because if we do help 100 million people get to that root cause of a problem they can't seem to fix, it's going to change everything. So that personally, selfishly, that's what makes me very optimistic about the future.
It's actually seeing it put into practice and then seeing lives change. That's got to be really exciting for you.
Very much. It's like I said, you wonder if people are going to read it. I use some strong language in one part, and I was so worried about it that we were considering other editions before the book even came out. Jack Canfield was only the second person I had to read the book. There was an author's retreat that he was hosting that I went to, and it was really cool because he's, for such being a sweet, nice man, and I met him 20 years ago, and he sold 500 million books. So I figured he'd be a good person to tell me if he thinks I can make it better. And I had 6 people in front of me, and he was just tearing people apart. Your story's bad. You got mistakes. You need to rewrite it. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. I was like number 7. And he's like, let's see, Kevin, St.Clergy. Oh, right. Yeah. I stayed up till midnight reading your book. I loved it. It's going to be a classic. You got it. He's actually on video saying that on some of the websites we have, because we just need to figure out how to market it. And by the way, I loved your effing part. He didn't say it that way. So I haven't changed it. And now we're into about 6-8 months after the book is launched, and I've taught it a lot. It seems to be the thing that the people that are remembering the most, because we have a part in there, we call it MFD. I'm not going to cuss on your show, but it's make an effing decision. Once you've found the right problem, you've shared it with an outside source to confirm that really is the right problem. At some point, you've got to make an effing decision to do something different. And MFD is how we say it. And people are putting it on their shoes. There's so many things that have happened that I didn't expect. They're putting it on their shoes. They're wearing hats on it. A group of people showed up to our mastermind with MFD on their hats and their shoes. It was just really, and their t-shirts. It was really cool. So something I was very worried about has turned into an entire movement. But here's the thing. I
love that, because it's a bias to action. And just, we know this, you were mentioning your whole fitness journey, and I'm into that. I'm very passionate too. And there's something about just keeping our bodies in motion, even as we age, and, just what that means in terms of our health. There's value in motion, and the same thing comes to making decisions, and fill in the blank, however you want to do it. So you've started a movement there.
Yeah, it's been really cool. So I'm not having another edition. People either like it or they don't. And that's kind of where we're at. But it's right now, when I ask people, what was your biggest takeaway from the book? What was your biggest takeaway from my keynote? And it's very consistent. MFD. I've got to make better decisions, and I've got to make faster decisions. I've got to become more decisive. Because, and there's a quick story for that, if you don't mind taking a couple extra seconds to share that. When I was coaching a person, and I had helped her come up with, we were about to make an acquisition that was going to double her business, and I had turned her on to a couple of funding sources, and they kept coming back with better offers every time. And her name's Kayla. She's given me permission to use her name. And she's like, Kevin, what do you think I should do? This is on the coaching call. I was like, well, Kayla, I think you need to make an effing decision. Now, I've known her for 7 years. I helped her start her business. It was great. She's like, okay. So she leaves, comes back, and I've started all my coaching calls the last several years with a new statement, not how are you? I just say what's going well, because, and when you start using that, watch what happens, because people go, wait a minute, I was perfectly willing to complain, but what is going well? It'll make them stop and think. But it also starts the meeting off in a good place. And she was very excited. She's like, yep, I'm MFDing all over the place. You've completely changed my life. Even my husband's noticed. We got the business. We had to get rid of the owner, but it happened. We made some mistakes, but I pivoted or perished just like you taught me. And I'm like, wait a minute, stop. What are you talking about? MFD? She's like, yeah, make an effing decision. I'm doing it. And I'm like doing it every single day. Changed my life. And I said, Kayla, that's awesome. Do you mind if I use that in my book? So we actually gave her an MFD award because it was really her idea. I'm the one that said make an effing decision. She turned it into MFD, but it's become a thing.
And as we wrap up our conversation, Kevin, do you have any other final advice for leaders to increase their impact and elevate the performance of their teams?
Yes. And I think it goes back to how we started off. A key phrase that we use is, it's not that you're failing. You're just solving the wrong problem perfectly. Find the right problem, and it changes everything. And if you're not sure how to do that, self-promotion, you can get a copy of Beyond Blind Blaming on Amazon, or you can get a copy of blindblaming.com. From what I've heard from the sales leaders who have purchased it or gone through the training or hired me as a keynote speaker, it's changing their teams and their teams' lives. One person actually came back and said, look, I got to share this with you. We had our whole team read your book, and this one person came in and said, look, not only has it made a difference for me at work, my relationship at home is 10 times better. And that was something that was really cool to hear.
Well, Kevin, thanks again for joining, sharing your journey, and reminding all of us that we can and need to get beyond blind blaming. And I wrote it down, MFD. The movement is alive and well. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Same. Thanks for having me.
And a reminder, please continue to give the gift of feedback to help make this podcast even better. You can do that by going out and giving a rating and a review. It's so easy to do on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast and Spotify. And as always, make sure to visit marketimpactnow.com for the latest in business leadership perspectives. So long until next time.